Alright guys, let's... Let's do the chilling of the exorcism of anneliese michel, sorry.
Should gay marriage be legal? Absolutely not. I'm for traditional marriage, and I am not a hater for saying that. It's been like...
It's nice to unwind after a long week of telling people how Liberty Mutual customizes your car insurance. Painful. So we're about to discuss a case of demonic possession so chilling and controversial.
New news?
The movie The Exorcism of Emily Rose. What follows is the true story that inspired that, The Exorcism of Anneliese Michel. It's one of the few actual cases of demonic possession that went to court.
All right. Wait, did they sue the demon?
You'll find out.
Okay.
Born in 1952 in the small town of Klingenberg.
Hold on guys. Okay guys, I'm sorry.
In Bavaria, Germany. Anneliese Michel was raised as a strict Catholic and was described as very bright and likable. In September 1968,
Watch.
Anneliese was 16 years old. She experienced her first
Sorry,
episode
guys.
of losing consciousness, and later that night,
See
she
my
felt
new
as
news?
if something was pressing down on her chest, pinning her to her bed. 11 months later, in August 1969, a similar event occurred, and her mother took Anneliese to their family doctor, Dr. Vogt, and a neurologist, Dr. Luthi, who examined her and even ran an EEG, a brain scan, but found nothing wrong. They hypothesized that it could possibly be a form of seizure. Over the next 3 years, Anneliese would have 2 more similar episodes and was prescribed 2 medications, an anticonvulsant medication and an anti-seizure medication called...
Wait a minute guys, I'm gonna... Okay guys, I'm so sorry about that. I had to take the new news back in the cages.
Delanted. On both occasions, an EEG would come back normal with some minor irregular patterns, but nothing that would definitively explain her symptoms.
What year was this?
This was in 1969.
Okay. I'm fine with that so far. That sounds real.
Okay.
Little spiders on me. Sorry if I blew it on you.
Well, you did. It was in spring 1973 that things took a turn for the stranger. Anneliese began to hear knocking sounds in her bedroom. Sounds her sisters would hear as well. But even more alarming, Anneliese also reported hearing a voice damning her to hell. Her mother was further rattled when she witnessed Anneliese furiously staring at a statue of the Virgin Mary with, quote, eyes turned black, jet black, and her hands seemed to turn into thick paws with claws.
What? Those are some chunky paws on her daughter. Uh-oh.
You know what? Let's move on. Let's not get caught up on the bare hands. I shouldn't have even said that part.
Yeah, we can't move past her having paws.
I knew you were going to like that. I'm just
She
going
got
to move
little
past
kitty cat paws.
September 1973, in a neurological visit with Dr. Luthi, Anneliese described horrific visions of demon faces that were tormenting her and stated that she felt the devil was inside her. She also reported smelling something that had the aroma of burnt feces, a stench that many around her would report smelling at later times.
Why do all these people know what burnt feces smells like?
Well, I can imagine it just smells like feces
Like
with a little,
shit on fire?
a little smokier. Fucking, fuck, is that a bee? See what you get? This is what you get. Yes, think of Around this time, Anneliese's mother described these strange occurrences to Dr. Luthi, who, according to Mrs. Michel, advised them to consult a Jesuit, a claim that Dr. Luthi would later deny.
Yeah, that's a bad doctor.
Yeah, I mean, if he said that,
Go see it.
that's fucked up, right?
Yeah.
Whether or not that's true, the family definitely searched for a priest and eventually found a priest named Father Alt. In November 1973, Anneliese met with a Freudian psychiatrist who diagnosed her as a neurotic with possible epilepsy, and another neurologist found she had, quote, epileptic patterns, and took her off Dilantin and put her on Tegretol, a much stronger drug. In July 1975, Anneliese's extremely odd behavior worsened. She barely slept and prayed fervently all night. She ate spiders and flies, and even licked her own urine up from the floor. She destroyed rosaries, crucifixes, and holy pictures on the walls. Anneliese also exhibited strength that was, quote, close to superhuman, throwing her sister, quote, as if she were a rag doll, and incredibly was observed effortlessly squeezing an apple with one hand until, quote, fragments exploded throughout the room.
I bet I could squeeze an apple till it exploded.
I bet you $1 million you couldn't.
Here we go. I mean, this is Germany. This is before preservatives.
You hear that in the distance? It's the excuse train coming.
Wait for it. You're full of shit, Ryan.
But now you can't just see two hands.
Well, she definitely used two hands.
You said one hand.
But still, that's not like an amazing metric.
A priest named Father Rodowik, a man considered an expert on
How did
exorcisms by
she
his
do that
peers,
though?
reported that he was convinced that
Had
Anneliese
you,
was
did you
possessed,
have to
and
get
after
more
deliberation
strength to
with the
do
bishop,
it?
an exorcism on Anneliese was formally approved. It was to be carried out by a priest named Father Renz. On September 24th, 1975, the first exorcism rite was performed. Father Renz allowed some of the exorcism sessions to be recorded, and 42 audio recordings of the exorcisms were made in total. I'm going to play some clips from those
42.
recordings, but fair warning, these recordings are
That's
perhaps
okay,
the
that
most
stuff
disturbing
don't scare
pieces of
me.
audio I've ever heard.
It's German. I'm in German, so I could read it for you. She said, this dumbass bitches. Means never.
She's screaming. She's giving it 110%. I mean,
Do you think that sounds like it came out of a girl? Like,
yes, it sounds like a girl doing a funny voice. But
your unrelenting skepticism is exhausting. It drains me of all happiness and energy, and I hope you know that.
Jewish in the air. Chin and Hitler.
That's all. We're all here. I ran out of evil people to think of. The blonde man from Die Hard is also in here. Skeletor from Masters of the Universe. Heath Ledger's Joker. Not Jack Nicholson. He was too cartoonish. You had your fun.
yeah, I've had my fun. Okay.
Anneliese also named Fleischmann as one of her demons.
Fleischmann.
Provided accurate details of the real Fleischmann, who was a priest in the 1500s that was kicked out of the church for bad behavior. These details came as an icy shock to Father Alt, who claims Anneliese would have no way of.
Freshman
is
used to be the priest and now turned
All the other
to
stuff is just things that a person could do.
the
To
devil.
learn more about demonic possession, we sat down with Father Gary Thomas, a Vatican-approved exorcist, who explained to us different signs of possession. All of these Anneliese had.
One would be an aversion to the sacred, so a person walks in this church and can't look at a crucifix, and you only see the whites of their eyes. Another would be knowledge of hidden things, where the demon will begin to tell you things about yourself that the person himself would have no way of knowing. Another
No
would be
way.
possessing a kind of inordinate physical strength that you normally possess. The last sign is sort of epileptic-like seizures on a person's face and the movement of their arms and legs in a way where they lose complete control.
By May, Anneliese became even worse, banging her head against the wall and biting herself and others, to the
Oh
point
my
where her
gosh.
family had to tie her up to prevent her from hurting herself. But most dangerously, Anneliese refused to eat. She described it as, quote, not being permitted to eat. Despite being quite frail, likely weighing under 80 pounds, she exhibited great strength when people tried to restrain her.
Yeah, I just feel bad for her at this point. Yeah, I do feel bad. She's definitely tortured.
By June, Anneliese's entire face was sunken. She also refused a doctor visit, even though she had a very high fever. On June 30th, Anneliese had another exorcism, only saying please, absolution. The next morning, her family went to her room and found her dead. Despite seeking medical attention early on, Anneliese refused to submit to medical attention in the end, as she and her family ultimately placed all faith of recovery into the exorcisms. She died of starvation at the age of 23 after 67 exorcisms, weighing only 68
That's
pounds at
young.
the time of her death.
Do you think that just made her, like, buy into it more? If people started exercising me on the reg,
Exercising you in the rig?
yeah, I might eventually be like, I guess I'm demons.
I would agree with that frame of mind, but Anneliese's belief that she was possessed predates
all
the exorcisms or the priests or any of that stuff. After her death, Anneliese's parents and the two priests were accused of negligent homicide, and the case went to trial in 1978. What follows are the two sides of that case. First, let's review the position of the defense. The defense presented eyewitness testimony and formally submitted the recordings as evidence of possession, an idea that the court never seemed to take seriously. From a non-religious standpoint, the defense argued Anneliese was permitted to deny medical treatment, as was her lawful right. For what it's worth, medical treatment might have included tranquilizing her, force-feeding her, and electroshock therapy. Quote, all presumably against her will, end quote. Family friend Thea Hine recalled in her testimony that in 1976, a few months before Anneliese's death, Anneliese reportedly, quote, begged on her knees for Hine to not suggest medical attention to anybody. Also worth noting is the fact that Father Alt actually looked for medical help towards the end. And on May 30th, his friend, Dr. Richard Roth, visited Anneliese out of what he claims was scientific curiosity and not as a physician.
He just was like, I'm not here as a doctor. I just want to see someone who's crazy.
I know, who fucking says that?
I want to see this girl eat
That's
spiders.
That's like something you say
holy
when you
crap. That's messed up.
when you go see someone that's tied up.
That is a bad man right there.
Okay. In his visit, Dr. Roth claims Anneliese had no external injuries, although Father Renz noted she had several bruises, a swollen cheek, and black eyes. An interesting contradiction, to say the least. Dr. Roth also denied saying, quote, there are no injections against the devil, end quote. Shady as fuck. Yeah. Curiously, in spite of all the
Yeah,
supposed
it
epileptic
is.
attacks, an autopsy revealed
This is
Anneliese
how
had a healthy
70s
brain
used
with
to
no
be.
damage that could have caused epileptic seizures. Quote, not even on a microscopic level, end quote. What say you to that?
I mean, I'm not a, what's a brain scientist?
A neurologist?
Yeah, there we go. Sorry, it's been a long day. I'm not a neurologist. I don't know what the.
It's funny that you said that because the neurologist said the exact same thing.
Yeah. He said I'm not a neurologist?
It probably sounds like it. You might as well.
Look, I don't fucking know.
I don't know. Go visit a Jesuit. Jesus.
Just get your shit stick out of my office.
And even more curious was the court's seeming non-consideration of facts, such as her pupils being unusually dilated and the absence of ulcers on her body, which are frequently found in victims of starvation.
Okay, all right.
Any quotes on that?
I mean,
This is great. The tables have turned, in my opinion. Now, let's review the position of the prosecution. The prosecution argued that Anneliese had epilepsy and psychosis, and that the parents and two priests were liable for failing to act to save her life. The defense tore down notions of possession. They questioned the credibility of Father Alt, with the conclusion from two experts
You know,
that
I do
Father
have that
Alt
movie
exhibited
up
signs
about
of
Emily
schizophrenia.
Rose. I need to watch an Exorcist movies, guys, so.
He was the guy that initially helped Anneliese.
Yeah.
The prosecution also argued that the medications given successfully suppressed the epilepsy-like seizures, and argued that that suppression morphed into, quote, a delusional psychosis associated with epilepsy, end quote. They argued that Anneliese's psychosis was exacerbated by the exorcism, which only played into her fantasy. To piggyback on that, Anneliese often went through phases between exorcisms where she behaved normally, even though she would behave as a possessed person during exorcisms. It's unclear if the epilepsy-like seizures were stopped by medication or if they actually stopped on their own. But Anneliese's psychotic visions predate the alleged medical suppression.
Weird.
Sorry. Basically, they're saying that the psychosis was brought on by the suppression of the drugs.
Yeah.
But
Hmm.
this psychosis
But it happened.
predates the drugs. Exactly. In the end, the court ruled in favor of the prosecution, sentencing the four defendants to 6 months in prison with suspension for 3 years and payment for all court costs. The court ruled that Anneliese was unable to make decisions for herself and should have been forced to submit to medical care. Professor Felicitas D. Goodman, an author of a book on the case, notes the theories that Anneliese was epileptic were presented as, quote, a statement of undisputable fact, not conjecture, as in fact they had been. End quote. How do you tell the difference between possession and mental health?
Sometimes both are going along side by side. You have to determine what is the root cause of the suffering of this individual. You start out with the discernment, and the discernment involves myself and a whole team of people. I have a medical doctor, a clinical psychologist, and a psychiatrist. In fact, a formal exorcism only happens as the last resort.
Given the evidence that we've seen and all the strange occurrences and the voices, I think there is sufficient evidence to not conclusively rule out that she was possessed beyond a reasonable doubt.
Sure.
So you acknowledge that.
I acknowledge there's a lot of factors in this case. I personally think there's something going on with mental health, and I also think that 67 exorcisms probably don't leave your mind in a good spot.
I can see both sides. I
Ooh.
can see how it would be mental health.
That's a
I can
lot.
see how it would be possession. I lean towards possession. That being said, she should have gone to the hospital.
Get that girl to a hospital,
She's
please.
possessed or not, fucking force her to go to the hospital and let the doctors be like, holy shit, the shit's floating around.
PSA, if your kids see the spiders.
Don't take him to an exorcist. Take him to an exorcist, but do it at the hospital.
No, don't take them straight to the hospital.
You can do both. That's what I'm saying. You can do both. You can have it happen at the hospital.
Okay, that's fine, yeah.
Regardless of the court ruling, many have debated what actually led to Anneliese's death. Was it a case of mental illness, possibly epilepsy? Or was this a legitimate case of demonic possession? Whatever the real reason may be, the case of
Oh,
Anneliese
no.
Michel is a tragedy and will always remain unsolved.
Hmm. Wow. That's insane. She had to go through 67 exorcisms. Oh my. That's a lot of did that all these years. Back in the 70s. Alright. I will see you guys my 5th one, so I see you then.